Philippines has no intention of rejoining the ICC. Ang miniting namin ay dahil sinasabi ngayon na itutuloy ang investigasyon. Sinasabi naman namin may investigasyon naman dito. Patuloy rin naman ang investigasyon. Bakit magkakaroon ng ganon? Para alam natin ang gagawin natin, if we will respond, if we will not respond, kung sakali man sasagot tayo, ano magiging sagot natin, or possible din, hindi natin papansinin dahil hindi naman tayo sumasailalim sa kanila. The ICC is a very different kind of a court, kaya pinag-aralan muna, sinabi ko sa inyo, pag-aralan nyo na mabuti yung procedure para tama yung gagawin natin.
From the nation's capital, all sides, all the time, I'm Robbie Alampay.
And I'm Sean Yao. The big story tonight.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. says the Philippines has no plans to renew its membership in the International Criminal Court. Marcos Jr. made the statement a week after meeting with members of his administration's legal team to discuss the ICC situation. Recall that former President Rodrigo Duterte withdrew the country's membership after the ICC launched a probe into the Duterte administration's war on drugs. But when asked about the ICC's September 8 deadline for a comment on the investigation, the president said they will have to look into it first.
The ICC is a very different kind of a court, kaya pinag-aralan muna, sinabi ko sa inyo, pag-aralan nyo na mabuti yung procedure para tama yung gagawin natin. Kasi hindi natin, siyempre, kailangan baka ma-misinterpret yung ating mga ginagawa.
And to give us their take on the president's recent pronouncements regarding the country's stance on the ICC, we have with us tonight Mr. Carlos Conde, senior researcher for the Human Rights Watch Asia Division. He joins us now live via Zoom. Good evening, Mr. Conde, and welcome to the big story.
Good evening, Shaw. Good evening, Robbie.
All right, what's your take to the pronouncement of President Marcos saying that the Philippines will not rejoin the ICC? Is this a wise decision?
Well, this is not entirely surprising. I mean, he has already indicated before that he has no interest in cooperating with the ICC. So this is not something that's unexpected. And also, I have to point out that this is something that will not have a bearing on the investigation by the ICC. The ICC will proceed its investigation, whether the Philippine government will cooperate or not, whether it will rejoin the Rome Statute or not. This is something that the ICC has made clear. So Mr. Marcos and his advisors on this can spin this all they want, but the fact is that this is definitely going to happen. This is a decision that the ICC is keen to take.
But Kaloy, maybe you could build out some scenarios for us when you say that the process continues, and certainly the ICC and international legal experts have pointed out that the proceedings started long before the country withdrew its membership, and therefore it will continue. But how will that work? I mean, paint a picture for us. I mean, and some examples of what exactly can the ICC do, whether inside the country or outside the country, for purposes of continuing its investigation, even without the Philippines cooperating?
Yeah. So keep in mind, Robbie, that when the Philippines withdrew from the ICC, or even before that, they have already, the Duterte administration had already said that they will not cooperate at all with the ICC. But still, the ICC prosecutor's office continued with its preliminary investigation and moved to request the trial chamber to proceed with a formal investigation. And it did that without the cooperation of the Philippine government. How they were able to do that? They had, the cooperation with a lot of the victims of the drug war. They had the support and the cooperation of several non-government or civil society organizations, human rights advocates in the Philippines who provided information to the ICC. And also, families of the victims themselves provided information to the ICC, verified information to the ICC, that the ICC then used to make the determination that the investigation should be pursued. Now, keep in mind, the ICC, while it is based in The Hague, it has And while it is, in some ways limited in its resources, it has the capability and the expertise to do this sort of thing. This is not something that happened just now in the Philippines. It has faced similar problems in other countries in its investigations over the years. So this is not something new. This is not unusual territory for the ICC. They have the will, the wherewithal, they have the resources, and they have the expertise to pursue an investigation regardless of the non-cooperation of the state. So I think it is also very important to point out that the ICC here is determined to pursue this because they made a commitment to do this, whether the government will cooperate or not.
Okay, now, again, that word, cooperation, you still frame it as with a question mark at the end, whether or not they will cooperate or not. To the wording of Mr. Marcos' statement, it was very clear, categorical, we have no plans to be a member of the ICC again. On the other hand, he also said, I directed the legal team, pag-aralan nyo pa rin yan because we want to understand all the implications. Membership is separate from every notion or option of cooperation. Am I getting that right? In other words, even without membership, there is still a matter of cooperation that they're not necessarily easily brushing away?
Well, here's the thing. Cooperation is ideal. Cooperation is something that the ICC really seeks from the government. This is why before they proceeded to the investigation, they actually gave the Philippine government a chance to respond to its earlier determination that the so-called investigation or review by the Philippine government of the drug war cases has been done. The determination was that the Philippine government failed to support that assertion. So cooperation is ideal, but it is not something that will derail an investigation.
Okay.
When the Philippine government got out of the ICC, that doesn't mean the ICC no longer has jurisdiction of the cases in the Philippines that were committed when it was a member. That's precisely the position of the ICC now, that although hindi na member ang Pilipinas ICC, the cases that were filed against President Duterte happened during the membership of the Philippines in the ICC. So that's non-negotiable as far as the ICC is concerned.
Okay, but at the end of the day, bottom line here is not even the government, but really the quest for justice for the victims of the war on drugs. And what does this mean for them? And what other avenues do they have? Or are all their eggs in the ICC basket?
That's a very interesting question, because right now, Robbie, the ICC investigation is about the only hope for justice among many of the victims of the drug war. Other international mechanisms to get justice and accountability have actually faltered. While they cooperate with the UN Human Rights Council, for instance, the HRC is not about to. They declined the request to have some sort of mechanism in the Philippines to investigate the drug war. So they're now stuck with a so-called joint cooperation with the Philippines. So the ICC right now remains as the only viable avenue for victims of the drug war to pursue justice. And the decision by the President Marcos to not rejoin the ICC, while it is not relevant to the investigation itself, that prolongs their wait for justice. Because obviously, it would be better if the Philippine government cooperates with the ICC. I mean, if it's really serious about accountability, it would be better for this government to cooperate with the ICC and provide all the necessary information and evidence that is needed by the court to come to a determination about these cases. But apparently, accountability is the least of the priorities of this administration.
Right, but of course, if you are a victim and you want to get some sort of a justice or retribution or some sort of reward even, how would that then play out without cooperation from the government?
Well, this is where the role of the international community is crucial. Because domestically, it's really extremely difficult right now to expect any sort of justice or any accountability mechanisms or from institutions in the Philippines. So, apart from the ICC, the victims' families can still pursue their cases before the UN Human Rights Council. Definitely, there's going to be a next session in September where they are going to reassess the joint program with the Philippines and the United Nations and see whether it needs to be improved or scuttled or what. So that's something that the victims can still run to. And also, there are there's a diplomatic community. There's the EU, for instance, that plays a large role in the Philippines as far as human rights goes. So that's something that the families of victims can still resort to. One particular mechanism in the EU is what is called the GSP Plus, the General Systems of Preference Plus, which provides incentives, tax or tariff incentives to the Philippine government as long as it abides with its human rights commitment. Now, victims of the drug war can invoke that mechanism, can lobby for the EU to tighten its enforcement of that mechanism against the Philippine government. And it's coming up in the discussions with the EU, and that's something that, again, the victims of the drug war can definitely tap into.
Well, this is a new administration. They are carrying over the same argument from the previous administration. One thing crucial for the ICC to intervene: unwilling, unable to investigate on the side of the state. This new government is saying that, look, you can say what you want about the previous administration. Right now, we're starting from a clear table where we are saying we are not ignoring this. We have local mechanisms in place, and we are not saying that we are unwilling to investigate this. What do you say to that?
Well, that's funny, Robbie, because if you look at the people, the advisors that Mr. Marcos has convened to advise him on the ICC matter, these are all individuals who supported President Duterte's drug war, who are in one way or another also complicit in the abuses that were committed in the last 6 years. So it is very telling. It tells you that it's going to be business as usual. It tells you that this administration is going to pursue the policy of the previous administration in terms of trying to deflect any attempt at accountability. Already they're already doubling down on the point that the justice system, the judiciary in the Philippines is working perfectly. Now, that needs to be contextualized. It works. Anybody can still file a case, but the matter is that the thousands and thousands of killings related to the drug war have not been investigated. Only one conviction has happened since the drug war began. And that is a very, very, I would say, serious lapse in the Philippine government's effort for justice.
All right, on that note, thank you so much for your time and your insights. Carlos Conde, Senior Researcher for the Human Rights Watch Asia Division. Join us in the conversation. Our big question tonight: should the Philippines rejoin the ICC or not? Share your thoughts on our Facebook and YouTube live stream or post a tweet with the hashtag #TheBigStory. We'll show some of your comments later on in the program.
President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. has chosen the new leaders for the AFP, PNP, and NBI to beef up the country's security forces. Malacanang confirmed that Southern Luzon Command Chief and Medal of Valor awardee Lieutenant General Bartolome Vicente Bacaro will lead the AFP. Meanwhile, Northern Luzon Police Area Commander Lieutenant General Rodolfo Azurin Jr. was handpicked as the new chief for the Philippine National Police. Eduardo de Lemos, the current officer in charge of NBI, was installed as the agency's director. After the break, let's discuss the legacy of the late former President Fidel V. Ramos. That and more when the big story returns. Keep it here on One News.
A key sector in our transformation plans is that of energy. Another fundamental requirement for growth and increased employment will be the availability of cheap, reliable energy. This This even comes under the category of ease of doing business. If we are to attract investors, both local and foreign, to set up shop here in the Philippines. At present, our demand for energy far exceeds our reliable supply. We must increase the level of energy production. We must look at every possible option that would be appropriate for the Philippine situation. There is some room to expand our present power supply through existing power sources, but this is only to a very limited extent. We must build new power plants. We must take advantage of all the best technology that is now available, especially in the areas of renewable energy. Our search for new power sources should always be with an eye to improving the mix of the energy supply between traditional and renewable sources. The technology on renewable energy is progressing rapidly, and many of these technologies are appropriate for the Philippines. I believe that it is time also to re-examine our strategy towards building nuclear power plants in the Philippines. We will comply, of course, with the International Atomic Energy Agency regulations for nuclear power plants as they have been strengthened after Fukushima. In the area of nuclear power, there have been new technologies developed that allow smaller scale modular nuclear plants and other derivations thereof. Once again, PPPs will play a part in support as funding in this period is limited. To my fellow Filipinos, ang aking mga minamahal na kababayan, batid ko na hindi madali.
You're watching The Big Story here on One News. Fidel V. Ramos was many things to many people. He was a military man, a president, a hero. Mobile journalist Jacob Lazaro tells us more about Ramos's legacy in this report.
Former Press Secretary Lulu Ilustre last saw the late President Fidel V. Ramos at a book launch 6 years ago. She said he looked strong and healthy.
Actually, when he is in a book launching, you don't see him not decline ng health. He looks so healthy.
Despite all the hard times they've been through together, Ilustre has nothing but admiration for her former boss. She saw him as decisive, invincible, and an unyielding military man. Under the late President Ferdinand Marcos Sr., FVR entered the military as a mere second lieutenant. Over the years, he rose through the ranks and became the Chief of Staff of the Philippine Constabulary and the Deputy Chief of Staff of the AFP. But he later on defected from the government to join the popular uprising as he accused Marcos Sr. of rigging the 1986 elections and corruption.
And I was with him even in the battleground. And we had a room which is called the battle something, where whenever there's a coup, there's where we all congregate, the military and the defense.
His defection then sparked the People Power Revolution, where he was hailed as a hero. All the way until he was president, Ilustre said Ramos didn't change.
You know, when we started on July 1, 1992, he already had a 6-year plan for the term. So he plans. Maybe it's the engineer in him.
After 12 years of working with Ramos, Ilustre didn't deny that the news of his passing brought her to tears. And now she became his press secretary again, for one last time, to honor his memory and share the story of the Ramos legacy, which she believes is something that we can all learn from today.
He has corrected a lot things that we thought was wrong in the government. The first thing he did after he won was to make friends with all his opponents. That kind of cultivating relationship with everybody for the good of the country is his legacy, I think.
Mobile journalist Jacob Lazaro, we are One News.
Here to share with us his insights about the legacy of the late former President Fidel V. Ramos, One News Defense Editor Manny Mogato. Manny, welcome to the big story.
Good evening, Sean and Robbie.
Manny, tama-tama, you were covering Malacanang.
I covered the former President Fidel Ramos when he was a general, when he was the Armed Forces Chief of Staff. All throughout the years that Cory was in power, Ramos defended her fighting against coup d'etat. So all the attempts against Cory, Ramos defeated. No? So when he ran for president, I was assigned by Manila Chronicle to cover him. And when he won, I was transferred to Malacanang. But I decided to leave Chronicle in 1994, and that's how I ended my stint in Malacanang. But I still covered him because I work for an international news agency, and we regularly interviewed President Ramos at that time. Because I think among all presidents, from Cory up to Duterte, Ramos is the most accessible to the press because he always gives interview. Exclusive interview to all reporters who requested it. And every week, every Wednesday, he has a press conference, whether in Manila or somewhere else where he's visiting. He always gives press conferences.
Manny, every time we talk about, sorry, Sean, every time we talk about Ramos, lahat ng binanggit mo, di ba? Even the starting point, di ba? Everybody starts with people power. Everybody starts with his stint and his rise to the Philippine constabulary, president, and so on. But is there anything about him that people actually forget?
Well, many people forget that he presided over the country's energy problem. Because we had a debilitating power outages, because Aquino did not build power plants, so we had 12-hour brownouts at that time, in 1992. So it was a bitter pill that Ramos had to swallow, getting suppliers to supply power generator, power barges, and then build immediate coal plants that are very expensive, and they're demanding higher ROIs for their investment. So we had a very big power problem that is very expensive.
And he had to provide the stopgap solution to that, as well as a long-term strategy.
Yes, because at that time, if you are relying on gas turbines, mahal yun. Mahal. Oh. So I think coal is the most affordable at that time. I think until now.
Until now.
Until now.
Actually,
and 60%
if I may,
of our power supply is generated by coal.
I do remember that. That is my actually the biggest thing that I attribute to President Ramos, because finally may electric fan and may ilaw na sa classroom.
No, he brought,
after years of darkness.
He brought Masinloc online.
Yes.
I remember that.
Yeah. And the rotational brownout stopped during his time. But earlier we were interviewing Secretary Bebot Bello, who was also his secretary. And I asked him, what do you think is the biggest legacy that Ramos left? Out of all the, like you said, there's so many stories about him. He's very, very accessible, very good-natured guy, right? And he said it was the peace process, which I found interesting because Secretary Bello was not the defense secretary at that time.
Yeah. If you look at his background, he's a general, a military man. So you would think that he will be very strict, very strong, and dictatorial, maybe appointing soldiers in his cabinet. But he avoided that. And he made peace with all the rebels that are fighting the government. The rightists, the RAM, SAP, YOU, the Muslims in Mindanao, and the communist insurgency. No? Lahat yan, kinausap niya. And he was able to end the rightist movement, no? The RAM, YOU, SCP, because they signed the peace agreement with his government, and many of the soldiers were instated. In fact, many became general. Carlito Galvez became chief of staff. He was a YOU member. With the MNLF, Nur Miswari signed a peace deal. So he ended the Muslim rebellion. The only thing he left is the communist insurgency. There were a lot of documents that were made during his time. The Karil, the Jasig. I think everything is going on track. But his term ended. And, well, you know that what happened next. During Estrada's time, the insurgency went up again. Because during Fidel Ramos, the number of rebels went down from 26,000 at the peak of the insurgency during the last months of Marcos to about 5,000 during Ramos. When Estrada came in, it went up again to 9,000. And it was a hard dive until, well, Duterte was able to bring it down to 2,000.
Okay, Manny Mogato, maraming salamat for sharing those insights about the late President Fidel V. Ramos. More stories after the break. Keep it here on One News.
Thank you.
To my fellow Filipinos, ang aking mga minamahal na kababayan, batid ko na hindi madali ang ating pinagdaraanan sa nakaraang higit na 2 taon. Alam ko rin na ang bawat isa sa inyo ay ginagawa ang lahat ng inyong makakaya upang patuloy na harapin ang lahat na pagsubok sa kasalukuyan. I do not intend to diminish the risks and the challenges that we face in this turbulent time in global history. And yet, I see sunlight filtering through these dark clouds. We have assembled the best Filipino minds to help navigate us through this global crisis. We will endure. Let our Filipino spirit ever remain undimmed. I know this in my mind. I know it in my heart. I know it in my very soul. The state of the nation is sound. As for the horror stories that we have heard about the poor quality of educational materials and supplies that are being given to our schools, this must end. Our children must always be equipped with the best that we can provide. Ang edukasyon ay ang tangi nating pamana sa ating mga anak na hindi mawawaldas. Kaya anumang gastusin sa kanilang pag-aaral ay hindi tayo nagtitipid. Hindi rin tayo nagtatapon. And once again, I am not talking about history or what is being taught. I am talking about materials that are necessary for effective teaching in this day and age. Children now need connectivity to the internet. They need devices to use. They need computers, educational tools. So that they might participate fully in the digital community here and abroad. We must do better in the international rankings, especially when it comes to the so-called STEM subjects: science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. These skills, this knowledge, are necessary for our young people to be able to compete in a highly technological and competitive world. The raw talent is there in our young people. It is up to our educational system to develop and to refine that great pool of talent.
You're still watching The Big Story here on One News. Let's now take a look back at our big question tonight. Should the Philippines rejoin the ICC? For most commenters, the answer is a resounding no. Many of them did not cite the reasons, but some said they don't think the country should rejoin the ICC because that is also the president's stand.
Manuel Sibonga, on the other hand, believes that the president's refusal to rejoin the ICC means that he is afraid that the International Court would also look into human rights violations committed during the regime of his late father, Marcos Sr. You may also continue to join us in the conversation. Simply use the hashtag #TheBigStory and follow us on Twitter and Facebook at OneNewsPH. Like earlier, comments or tweets will be featured as part of our agenda to include you, the public, in the big story.
And that's the big story tonight. For more updates, follow News 5, the Philippine Star, and Business World Online. You may also log on to onenews.ph for more in-depth analysis. I'm Robbie Alampay.
The big story is also available via Signal Play. Make a free account now at signalplay.com and stream One News anytime, anywhere. I'm Sean Yao. Masks on, wash hands, and stay safe, Philippines.
We are One News, all sides, all the time.